Welcome back, everyone, to the Creator Spotlight here on the Spotlight on Fightful.com. A familiar face who you may know, Alex, Queen of the Ring, is here from host of Complex Unsanctioned, also Church of Joshi. Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing good. I actually just got back from the pottery studio. That's been my new hobby, so apologize if I'm like covered in clay.
I mean, we got to
What
ask,
did?
what have you been making? Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I've been making planters, honestly, because one of my bamboo plants, the potter like broke, and I'm like, well, I have access to a studio now, so I might as well make one. So yeah, I've been making some planters and just like some pinch bowls here and there, but
Very
it's been a
nice.
good journey. Yeah.
nice. It's always good to have some hobbies. Like, that's always a thing that I always tell people. Like, you know, have something to go, like, take your mind off stuff that, like, you feel like you can get better at, too. Like, if it's a new thing, like, you'll get better at pottery over time and you'll, like, see, like, the progression and it'll make you feel good. Like, it's good to have, like, hobbies like that.
Yeah, especially when you're in wrestling media. For sure, you
Yeah.
need a break. Like,
Yes.
I'm sure y'all already know where it's just like, especially being on wrestling Twitter, especially like dealing with everything. Like, you just need a break. Chuck your phone across the room and just unplug. You know?
You've got to log off just a lot, honestly, but you definitely got to have those breaks and get away from all of that. Alex, I want to get started by asking you, how did you get started, like in the wrestling media world?
Uh, it's it's been a long journey. I've been doing this for 5 years now. So I was an actor. That's how I've just been so comfortable in front of cameras and everything. I went to acting school. I went to a college for acting and studied theater. And I mean, I've loved wrestling all my life because I have two older brothers and I grew up in the 90s. So they were like suplexing me for days, pile drivers. And especially like being born and raised in New York, whenever WWE was always in Madison Square Garden, like it was just such a huge spectacle in my household. So wrestling has always been a part of my life. And I had breaks here and there. Obviously, when you're in high school, I'm sure y'all know when you're in high school and people are like, "You're still watching that?" You're like, no, I'm not watching that." But especially, as a girl, I was just like, "Oh, I'm definitely not watching wrestling. What are you talking about?" But yeah, it's just always been in my life, and I went to school for acting, and wrestling's kind of the same thing. It's theater, it's drama, pageantry. So I went to my first WrestleMania, which was WrestleMania 33. That was in Orlando. And I was just sitting there. I was with my friends. I was with my ex boyfriend at the time. And they were just, I remember these like two huge dudes sitting behind us. And how I am now, I was just like going off about this move and that wrestler and this wrestler and what their gear was wearing and this and that. And like, these guys were like, "Man, I've never met a girl like you before that like is into wrestling. Like, do you have a podcast? Like, you all are just gelling together." And I was like, "No, I don't have a podcast, but that seems like something I should do." Because at the time I was auditioning and, the good old New York story of a struggling actor. I was bartending and I was doing stand up and improv in the city, and I studied UCB. So I was like, I want to do something more. And especially, I guess like 4 or 6 years ago, YouTube was such a huge thing, especially for actors. Like, you'd always put your reels up there or your audition tapes up there. So I was like, okay, I have some experience with YouTube and sitting down and recording myself. So why not do this with something that I love, which is wrestling? So I took a whole year to study like algorithm and YouTube and podcasting and coming up with a name. And I first came up with Queen of the Mat, and I was like, that's weird, I don't think I like that. And then I saw Beth Phoenix had a shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees and it said Queen of the Ring, and so I copied and pasted that logo and into Photoshop, and I made my own logo, which was Queen of the Ring. And then the rest is history. My first event I went to was the 2018 Royal Rumble, which was the first all women's Royal Rumble. And that was the first event I vlogged myself. And even vlogging, like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, why not? The camera's on and I know how to turn it on. So yeah, it's been like that ever since.
Okay, so we're gonna probably jump around quite a bit here
Yeah.
because I've got to ask next. Hearing you going to your first like WrestleMania and everything, I was there as well at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. That was an awesome show. And like the venue and everything. That's still my profile picture ever since. Like on all my social media is me at WrestleMania 33 because I thought like the set looked so cool and everything. And so. But so fast forward a few years and you wind up actually like doing stuff with the WWE, like with like, you know, their actual production and like talking to people. Was it the bump that you did? It was.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I was a part of the bump, and then I did the Royal Rumble watch along for 2021 last year.
That's right.
And then, yeah, and then I did the Ultimate series, which is like Ultimate WrestleMania and Ultimate Backlash.
See, I remember seeing that pop up on Twitter because I'm pretty disconnected from the WWE product nowadays. Like I live more so in like the indie world and AEW and stuff. But I pay attention to WWE because like you got to, if you follow wrestling, you got to at the very least be following. And I remember thinking it was so cool seeing stuff popping up on Twitter that you were actually doing stuff on WWE programming. So congratulations to you, first of all, though. That is awesome. Going from a fan just like 5 years ago to being on the shows. And I do remember seeing that about the bump and about the watch alongs and all that. And like, so how did that come to be? Like, who reached out to you and like, how did that happen?
So one of the producers from the bump DM'd me, and it was in my requests folder. And I saw it was in my request folder, and I was like, this can't be real. So I DM'd him back, and sure enough, he was real. I thought it was just some troll, like just trying to, there's trolls everywhere all over the internet, especially wrestling Twitter.
Oh, there's probably some in the comments watching right now.
Yeah, probably.
So, yeah.
So he reached out to me, and it was like, hey, we might have a position opening up for the bump, but we'd love to have you on and do something, get some interviews in or something with you. And I was like, there's no way that this is real. Like, I still was pinching myself the whole time because when I started this, that was never a part of the goal. I don't have any goals even now. Like, I just go with the flow and I do anything that makes me happy. And especially again with wrestling media, like there's so much to catch up on, there's so much to digest and then to review and then predictions and there's so much. And when I started this, that was never a part of the goal to like work with WWE. It just happened. And they reached out to me, and then we did the bump with the Royal Rumble. They said that they were going to do a watch along on YouTube and if I would like to be a part of it. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I was a part of it, and then I was on the bump. And it was funny enough, the episode I was on the bump where I had to pick my numbers for their Royal Rumble predictions, they were interviewing Charlotte Flair, and I'm on screen because I had to do it through Zoom. And I'm getting ready, and they're in my ear, and they're like, okay, we're gonna count you in about 5, and oh yeah, like Charlotte Flair's gonna be here, so you'll have a chance to talk to her. And I'm like,
real casual.
What? Yeah, like, huh?
Just no heads up, just like you can ask Charlotte whatever.
Yeah, and I guess like it was good marketing for them because like Queen of the Ring and then the Queen Charlotte Flair. It's like, this is great, but what the heck? You could have gave me like a day warning or something, not like a 5-minute warning. So like we go live, and they're like, oh, this is Alex, Queen of the Ring. Like, do you have anything to say to Charlotte? And like, she was just promoting Mountain Dew. And I was like, so nice to see you. Mountain Dew. It's great, right? Yeah. Baja Blast. Like, I had no idea what to say to her. But I guess I pulled myself off very well.
What if she just started cutting a promo on you and be like, I'm the real Queen of the Ring? Like, what is this? How do you respond to something like that?
See, I would pan the camera to the floor and start bowing down. Like, what do you do?
That's a good response, yes.
Yeah.
That would be very good.
Yeah, so like she was super cool, and then like we did that, and then it aired the next day. And then we did the watch along, and I just so happened to win the Royal Rumble prediction because I drew number 3, and that was Bianca Belair, and then she won the Royal Rumble that year. So then I guess, built up a good relationship with them, and they invited me out to their studio to do the Ultimate WrestleMania. And that was just insane because, you're driving up to Stanford. I don't know how to drive, so my friend drove me. I'm like a pure New Yorker. I do not have my license. So my friend's driving me, and he's like, "This is the coolest shit that you've ever done." Ever. I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know how I got here." And that's like a running joke that I always have with myself is like, I don't know how I got here. I just exist in this space, and people just seem to be happy that I'm here. So yeah, I went there, and then they had all these they had Taker's jacket and WrestleMania signs and everything, and it was just so wild. And the studio where they filmed the bump was there, so it was really great to work with everyone and all the producers and Matt and Ryan and Sam. They were absolute sweethearts, and they welcomed me with open arms, and I was petrified. I really was, because it's intimidating. First of all, the whole set there is just intimidating on its own. They have all this old memorabilia, and of course you don't want to be a mark. But I did sneak in a point at the WrestleMania the WrestleMania sign, because you could not,
You got to.
Yeah, you got to. But yeah, it was so wild, and I still can't believe that I did that, because again, like you said, I went from being a fan literally my entire life, because again, I grew up watching that since I was a wee little thing. And
when I know you're a long-time Shawn Michaels fan, presumably from his run in the 90s originally. So
Listen, I was looking for some Shawn Michaels memorabilia, a jacket, a hat, or something. They didn't have it.
Earrings, something to maybe snatch up.
Yes, and to be honest, might be good, because I would have snatched it up. Exactly. I would have I don't know where it went. Sorry. But yeah, it was just so wild. It just proved that if you work hard and you believe in yourself and you're happy with the product that you're putting out into the world, things will happen. And again, it was never a part of my goals to work with them, but they liked what I was doing, and they were very specific that they liked, I made that Shawn Michaels video on my YouTube channel where it's top 5 favorite Shawn Michaels gear. And again, that's me bored with a green screen during the pandemic and just being what can I do for a video? I did wrestling ASMR where I'm tapping on championship belts ASMR and whispering promos. It's just me in my bedroom just having a good time. So it's just, the journey is wild.
A lot of stuff just starts like that, is you're just kind of doing what makes you happy and doing what is fun for you, and then you never know where it actually leads to. And another thing that you got going on is the Complex Unsanctioned podcast on Spotify. I know this is a new thing this year, and I know tonight this will actually air tomorrow, so by the time this is out, Big Swole was on the show last night, and then you've interviewed people like Liv Morgan, Faye Jackson has been on, Jade Cargill has been on. How did this whole thing come about?
Again, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. It was actually my co-host, Sir Wilkins. This is pretty much his baby, because he wanted to do this podcast for a while, and he had some connections with Complex. And Complex, again, another network that's just, how am I even here? Because they do Hot Ones, and I love Hot Ones. I watch that show all the time, and then their sneaker show that they have. So yeah, this was his pretty much creation, and I guess they were looking for a co-host, and my name came about, and I remember he DM'd me, which is funny enough how business inquiries just happens with DMs instead of emails.
That's how everything works nowadays.
Yeah.
DMs, yeah.
And it's always you never know how professional you should be in a DM versus an email and stuff, because everyone's so casual in DMs usually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's do I throw an emoji? Do I not?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So he DM'd me, and he was like, "Hey, did you get an email from Complex?" And I was like, "No." And then I got an email from Complex, and I got the notification. I was like, "Oh, I did, BRB." And then they emailed me, and they're like, "Hey, we're doing a wrestling podcast, and we'd be interested in you, if you'd like to be a guest." And your co-host would be Sir Wilkins. And I remember Sir Wilkins because he's from New York, and seeing him at indie shows, especially like shows like Evolve and Battle Club Pro. So I knew who he was, and I was very familiar with his other podcast called Jobber Tears Podcast. And I clicked with him very well. Like, whenever we saw each other in person, we just always, said hi to each other. I always had nice things to say and the same back. And I was surprised he wanted to work with me. And I was like, yeah, sure. Well, let's do this. And then it blossomed into this, and I didn't know it was gonna be like this. We're on Spotify Live, which is a brand new app on Spotify, and it's really cool because it's basically like Twitter Spaces a little bit, like Clubhouse Twitter Spaces, where we are actually live and the audience can participate and they're in the chat. And like when we had Liv Morgan on, like all the Liv Morgan fans came through, all of them, which was cool because like, the chat was just going off with questions for her. But it's nice because I feel like with the name Complex, there are, these superstars, these wrestlers that come on, and sometimes they could just like turn it off a little bit, because wherever they go, yes, they have to promote themselves, the company, the shows that they're on, especially Liv Morgan at the time, she was on promoting WrestleMania. But when she was on, we were talking to her about horror movies and her love of crystals and, and tarot cards and everything. And I think that's the beauty of the show, is that, wrestlers will come on and they'll talk about wrestling. They'll talk about their journeys, their gear and all that stuff. But I personally love to know who the person is, and I love to know what they're into, what inspires them beyond wrestling. Because, you have people like Jade Cargill. When she was on, it was super cool because she was talking about her love of N64 games, and she loved GoldenEye. But that's the thing, is that these people that we love watching every single week, they have other interests besides wrestling, and that's why, Jade Cargill will come out dressed as Storm because she loves X-Men and she like relates to that character. And even Liv Morgan herself, when she comes out with this like Britney Spears gear, like there's these other interests that I think there is a market for that. And again, like, when Xavier Woods is doing Up, Up, Down, Down, and he's having these superstars come on and talk about like video games and their love for it, like that's the stuff that I always love as a fan, when talking about contracts and everything. I know Fightful does that a lot, but I myself as a fan, I never had really that much interest in that. So it's nice to cater to a different department within the niche of wrestling within the show. So, yeah.
Look, that's all Sean Ross Sapp. He wants the contract information, not Jensen and I. If wrestlers want to come on here and talk to Jensen and I, we want to talk about like matches, and we'll get into some non-wrestling stuff. I don't care about contract stuff.
He needs the scoops. That's why.
Yeah. Liv, if you want to come on and talk about Chucky, I know she's a big Chucky fan. You want to come on and talk about Chucky? We can do that.
Hey, Jade Cargill, if you want to come on and talk about Nintendo 64, yes. I got you on that all day. So I lived in Nashville, Tennessee for about 10 years or so, before moving to Atlanta a couple years ago, kind of right around the time of the pandemic. And I used to go to a lot of shows around Nashville. And one of the best friends that I made while I lived there is named Kayla. And I was first exposed to you through her, mainly through y'all's Twitch communities. And I've never asked, how did you and Kayla meet?
So we met at WrestleMania 34. We met in New Orleans. And before that, we were following each other. And by then, I was already Queen of the Ring. I was already doing YouTube. And we met, like, we were just following each other on Instagram. And I remember instantly, I was like, that girl looks really cool, and I really want to be her friend. And I think our connection with Collar and Elbow, because I think she was like featured on their page and I was as well. That's how we followed each other. And she slid into my DMs. That's again, DMs. That's the running theme for the show. But she slid into my DMs and she's like, are you going to New Orleans? I'd love to meet you. And I was like, yeah, I am. And I remember Collar and Elbow was having like this Bourbon Street party at a club with Kevin Nash. And I was like, I'm not a clubber, and I was bartending, and I don't like the idea of going to a bar or club. Like, that's just me. I like going, but it's just like, I'm not a partier like that. And I DM'd her, and I was like, are you going to this? And she was like, sweetie, no, I'm old. I'm not going to that. I was like, okay, cool. Let's go to other shows together. And we just like instantly clicked. And then we were at WrestleMania. We were going to shows. We went to Progress. And then we went to Spring Break, Joey Janela's Spring Break. And then it was the Monday before Raw that day. We went to the Museum of Death in New Orleans. And then that's how we just clicked. We clicked through true crime, and we were talking about mine hunters, and we were in the Museum of Death, and like we're like bonding while we're looking at John Wayne Gacy's like pictures that he drew in prison. It was great. It was a magical time. And then we were just inseparable ever since. Like we just had other interests, like Drag Race. We loved RuPaul's Drag Race, and then just so much music and movies and horror and like Marvel and Star Wars, and like there was just so much that we bonded over besides wrestling. So that's where we met, and we've just been inseparable ever since. And then when the pandemic hit, we would have Skype parties like everybody else would, but we would watch wrestling. And there was one night where she wasn't on our Skype party. We were watching Akira Hokuto versus Manami Toyota. And everybody on the Skype call was losing our fucking minds because, like, we'd never watched that match. And we were like, what is this? This is so cool. So then I discovered it was Joshi Wrestling. And then Kayla had already started up her Twitch channel. And she was like, I want to do, like, a show on my Twitch channel. I'd love to do something with you. And I was like, why don't we just get into Joshi Wrestling? Like, it was a form of wrestling that we had never dipped our toes into. So we were like, let's do it together, And so that's how we recreated Church of Joshi. And it really just started from us just wanting to get more into the art of Joshi. And we always say, like, we're no experts. We don't know a thing. We're 2 years into it now. Like, we're a little bit of experts now. But at the time, we were just like, we don't know anything about Joshi. So if anybody wants to come watch us every Sunday and watch wrestling with us and watch Joshi, like, if you're experts, educate us, And I think that's the beauty with us because, we're two women in wrestling who are always told, like, oh, well, if you don't know this person, you don't know wrestling, or if you haven't watched this match, and it's just all, like, BS at the end of the day from some of the fandom. So I think the beauty with us in Church of Joshi is that we've created this path and this community where it's just like, you don't need to be a smark, you don't need to know everything. And if you don't know anything, feel free to ask us because we'll gladly educate you, and we'd love to be educated as well, because that's the beauty about wrestling is that there's so much happening right now where nobody needs to know everything that's going on. And also, you don't need to love everything that's going on too. Like, there's just so much happening, especially now where it's like, 15 years ago, there was barely any wrestling to watch, and even there was barely access for any wrestling to watch. So, like, what's the point of, being in this community, being in this fandom, and just acting like a, fucking smartass?
No, you're preaching to the choir. This is stuff I always talk about. Like, wrestling is so a la carte now with so many great options that, like, you can really pick and choose what you like and what you don't, and you don't have to bitch about everything you don't like. Like, you just watch something you like. It's like really easy to like find good wrestling that you're going to be into. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's always going to be somebody where it's just like, well, you don't like the wrestling that I like, so there's always going to be that person. But you know what? That person can stay in their corner because we're very accepting towards, like, and even besides Joshi, like, Kayla's on her Twitch channel watching Lucha Underground and she's never watched it. And there's people that's watching with her that's, like, excited to see her reactions. And it's the same way with Church of Joshi when we watch it. Like, there are matches that we've never watched before. Like, I remember she watched a Megami Kudo match, and I've watched Megami Kudo, and my mind is still blown with the performances that she's put on. But it's fun to watch my best friend experience this. And it's also fun where it's just like where I have a question about it, if something that I might not know about an event, like there are people that are there to educate us and hold our hands a little bit. And it's like, you know, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be upset that we don't like the wrestling that they like, but you know, to each their own. Like it's such an open world now where, again, like, you know, I'm sure y'all experienced it when you went to high school, like you'd get bullied for liking wrestling sometimes, you know? And even now when we're well in our 30s and people still look at us like we like wrestling, but then they love John Cena, they love The Rock, you know? And sometimes they come to us and they're like, hey, it's Ronda Rousey's wrestling, like what's going on there, you know? And we're here to educate them. So
it's so funny because that doesn't change for some people, because like there's a guy that I work with like outside of wrestling, like in like just like a normal job that I used to work with, and he is an older guy, about 10 years older than me, real strong Southern accent. So this is me being him, but yeah. I saw on his desk he had these little they're like Funko mystery mini WWE figures that he had. He had like a little Sting, like a little Razor Ramon or something on his desk. And I was like, hey man, it's like my first day. And I'm like, hey man, you like wrestling? And he was like, no man, you know, my kids are into it. They got so many toys at their place. I just bring them in, and I just have them here so I don't have to throw them away. And I was like, dude, I have like a wrestling podcast and like I'm like super into it. And he was like, yeah, man, I watch Raw every Monday. And it's like I unlocked it with him, right? And now ever since, like we always just talk about wrestling. You know what I mean? Yeah. But people are afraid. They don't want to get bullied because they don't want to make fun of liking wrestling, which is silly. You know?
There's that guard you got to put up sometimes where it's like, yeah, do you like it? You got to feel it out a little bit, you know? And especially now where it's just like with AEW being a thing, I feel like a lot of people are really into it, you know? Where it's like there is a difference between AEW fans and WWE fans, especially like mainstream, where it's like mainstream AEW fans were like, what is this? Like, what am I watching? You know? And the same thing with WWE fans, but there is like both in itself, both fan bases. And again, it's an open world. There's that excitement of like, oh, I found somebody else that likes wrestling. And then you like come into work that like Sunday after and Monday, it's like, did you see the pay-per-view? Oh my God, that was so crazy, you know?
Yes.
I know we got to wrap up soon, but I'm going to ask you two quick ones. First one is favorite drag queen.
I have to pick just one.
You can name a couple.
Okay. I love Trixie Mattel. I love Trixie
very
Mattel.
Nice. Yes,
she's so great. I love her. She is such a goofball. I've seen her live a couple of times, and she's amazing. I really love Sasha Velour because I actually got to see her performances in Brooklyn a couple of times, and she's amazing.
I saw her live. She was great.
Yeah, she's really, really good.
She puts on a really great show.
Yeah, she puts on a really great show. Very memorable show. Yes. And I do love Bob the Drag Queen. And I love his podcast. Yeah. His podcast, Sibling Rivalry. And he's just like always going off with Monet Exchange. But I love Bob the Drag Queen. And I think his stand-up, like, is something else. Like, he has a really good stand-up routine. I think he's probably one of the funniest drag queens that's entered like the workroom.
See, Bianca Del Rio is forever my queen. She's fantastic. I've seen her live, and she kills it. She's by far my favorite. She is, but it's the best. It's the absolute best.
I love it. She deserved that win. Like she won with flying colors that season.
Yeah. And then last one, coolest thing you have in your room.
Whatever.
It seems like there's a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things. Hold on. I'll get my biggest cool thing that I need both hands. Hold on one second.
All right. I know I lost Jensen completely on the drag race talk.
I was actually trying to look them up as you were saying that. I found Bianca Del Rio. I was just trying to see who you're talking about. I don't know anything about that world.
I got this. It was like my 23rd birthday. And I had the money, and I went to a comic book store, and Rogue is my favorite X-Men. I love the X-Men so much. And it was like, I had my hard-earned money. I was bartending at that time, and I really wanted to splurge on myself for the birthday gift. And so I got this like rogue figure, and she's like destroying a sentinel. It's so great. This
Very
is like the
sweet.
coolest non-wrestling thing that I own, and I think this would be something I would save if there was ever a fire here.
Very cool.
I
Love
had to
it.
get it, yeah. And
That
I
is
also
very
just
sweet.
watched Multiverse of Madness. It was so good.
Alex, let the people know where they can find you at.
Yes. So this is gonna be a long list. Bear with me.
That's
If you
okay.
want to listen to the Liv Morgan episode, Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair from Complex Unsanctioned, you can follow us on Spotify. We go live on Spotify Live every Monday and Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you want to get into Joshi Wrestling, you can follow Church of Joshi everywhere on Twitter and Instagram. We also have a Patreon, Church of Joshi. We have really cool exclusive stuff. We watch more matches there. We have a good time there. And we go live every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time over on twitch.tv/KaylaVision. I also have a Twitch channel where I've been diving into the world of Total Divas, and it's been unhinged, but I love every second of it. So you can follow me on twitch.tv/Queen of the Ring, and then Queen of the Ring with 2 G's on Twitter, _Queen of the Ring on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, Queen of the Ring. I've been diving into that world, and I believe that is it. Oh, also my YouTube channel, Queen of the Ring.
Yes, of course.
There's so much.
Hey, also, it's always good to have Alex around. She is a fan of Degrassi, which she has been a part of Degrassi Dudes. So she is in rarefied air as a guest on that show. So it was really good to see you again, Alex. It's been a minute, but it was great to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's great to catch up with y'all. Thank you so much for having me on this show. It's so much fun.
Thank you for joining us, Alex. We really appreciate it. Guys, we'll be right back here on the Spotlight.